Hi everybody, welcome to the Naples Preserve and our virtual nature program series. Today we're going to be talking about gopher tortoises. The Naples Preserve is located in the city of Naples, which is in southwest Florida, right on the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, we are surrounded by development. Let's get a little closer look there. To our north, which is at the top of the screen is the Coastland Center Mall. Over to the east, which would be to the right, is a major recreation area. And then all the other areas are housing developments and businesses. In total, we have about 9.47 acres, of which around 8.5 of that are utilized by our gopher tortoises. So what do we have in the preserve? Well, we have upland habitats. That's what gopher tortoises want, where it stays dry. So we have pine flatwoods. These are southern slash pine. We have oak rosemary scrub. And down at the bottom, we have what we're calling a grassy meadow. It varies. Some of it's scrub, others grasses. It's an area that was degraded, and we are working to restore it, especially the southern end down there on 14th Avenue, actually where it says grassy meadow on that map. And this is where we're working to restore right now. Going and looking at what's growing there, there's some probably 100-plus-year-old southern slash pines there. So that tells us this was a dry flatwoods. So we're working very hard right now to restore this to the dry flatwoods. Why are we talking about gopher tortoises today? Well, normally we would be having Gopher Tortoise Day celebration at this time of year. The official date is April 10th. However, since April 10th often falls during the week when families cannot come to the event because of school and going to work, and because most of our snowbirds have headed back up north, and by April 10th, it can be pretty hot here in Southwest Florida. So we've changed our event date to the third weekend in March. Some of the things that we do at the event, we have a gopher tortoise burrow. Here are some of our volunteers proudly showing off the burrow, and they should be. They worked really hard to put that up. Inside the burrow, people can walk in there, and there's a program going on there with video showing how a gopher tortoise digs its burrow, different animals that might be in the burrow, all kinds of really neat information about the gopher tortoise. Also, you can paint a rock. So you have your own pet gopher tortoise rock to take home with you. We invite a lot of our partners to put up exhibits. One is Southwest Florida House Rabbit Rescue, which is a group that rescues domestic rabbits that are no longer wanted by people. And they bring their domestic rabbits with them. So why would we have domestic rabbits at a Gopher Tortoise Day? Well, they're there to represent our wild rabbits that live in the preserve. This is a young eastern cottontail, and we also have marsh rabbits. There is a connection between rabbits and gopher tortoises. Trooper the blind raccoon often comes. Why would we have a raccoon there? Well, a lot of people don't like raccoons, but you know, they're nature's population control agent. Let's call them that. So they are important. And how their connection with gopher tortoises, and this has happened at the preserve, they'll come in and dig up the gopher tortoise nests and eat the eggs. And they don't stop there. They'll go and dig up the hatchling or very young tortoise burrows and have them for a meal. We have Keep COLLIER Beautiful and Waste Management come, and they bring Cycler, the robot. You can go up to Cycler and ask questions about gopher tortoises. The Conservancy of Southwest Florida comes and always has some really, really fun activities that concern gopher tortoises. We've even had Collier County Pollution Control there with fun activities because everything's connected down here. Pollution and water quality does affect the gopher tortoises. And what's an event without door prizes? Well, before we get going with true and false, the true and false section, let's learn a little bit about gopher tortoises. This is the current range for the gopher tortoise. You'll notice that they are in 6 states. Some of the states like Louisiana, they just kind of touch in there, in South Carolina also. And that they are also federally listed as threatened in some states. In Florida, they're listed as state threatened. If you look at the state of Florida, you might notice there are some blank spots there where they don't have the gopher tortoises living. Wonder why? Well, what occupies those spaces? Oh, we have the Okefenokee Swamp, Lake Okeechobee, and of course the Everglades. Remember, tortoises live in upland areas, which are drier areas. I want you to keep this map in mind as we're going through the rest of the program. Think about the temperature range within the gopher tortoises territory. How does Naples, Florida, where we are subtropical, and actually on the coast we're almost tropical, compare with the panhandle of Florida or Georgia? Is there a big temperature difference? This will help you decide whether it's true or false for some of the questions we're going to come up with. Gopher tortoises are known as a keystone species. So what is a keystone species? Matter of fact, what is a keystone? Maybe this will help you. Let's go to architecture. This is an arch, and the keystone is that center piece that's at the top. So what would happen if we would pull the keystone out from the arch? That's right, the whole thing will collapse. The keystone is holding everything together. The other stones are dependent on that keystone. So it's not the gopher tortoise, it's the burrow that the gopher tortoise digs. In this case, this gopher tortoise is not digging a burrow, it's just sweeping it out. When they come out of the burrow, see how loose the sand is? A lot of it falls down in there, so they just sweep it out. They're cleaning house there. Notice too in this video that the sand is dry, because our next video is going to show a gopher tortoise actually excavating a burrow. Look at the difference. Look how wet the sand is. They're burrowing down, they're making a tunnel down to where it's damp, and then they'll have a larger area at the end that's called the end chamber. This one's just turned around, it's pushing some of the sand out. And when they have a lot of sand, they'll actually use the front and act like a bulldozer and push it out farther. But look, we're back digging. Look how wet that sand is. This one is digging a new burrow. The tunnel goes down, it's about a 30-degree angle. As far as the length, it varies. It varies upon where they are and how far down they have to go to find moisture. Also varies with the age of the animal. So here's a look at a gopher tortoise burrow. The opening is called the mouth. If you notice, the mouth is the shape of a gopher tortoise, a half moon. The width of the mouth is the length of the tortoise that dug that burrow. That does not mean that the tortoise that lives in the burrow is that size though. A lot of people measure and go, oh wow, this is how big the tortoise is that lives here. Not necessarily, it only means that's the size of the tortoise that dug the burrow. They move on, they find other burrows, and somebody else will move in, and it could be a smaller tortoise. This is a burrow that has collapsed. This was the original size of it. You can see it's collapsed. It has a lot of debris in it. When surveys are being done, especially on land where they're going to be moving tortoises, they'll go around and try to find all the burrows. Now, most of those people, when they'd see a burrow like this, they would call it abandoned, and then it would just be forgotten about. But look what's in there. Do you see it? Do you see the gopher tortoise? Right there's the head. If you look down to the right, you'll see the shell. This is one of our 3-year-olds that moved into this burrow about a year ago. Matter of fact, several of the 3-year-olds moved into partially collapsed burrows, and it doesn't look lived in. They've got plenty of room to get in there without clearing out the debris. Now back to looking at the outside. There's only one way in and out. There's only one mouth. There's only a front door. There's no back door. Why don't they have a back door? Why is there only one way in and out? Well, let's think about a shotgun house. These are common down here in the South. Shotgun house has a front door and a back door. And can you see how they're lined up with each other? Well, let's pretend this is a gopher tortoise burrow. So we'll block these rooms off. What happens if you open the front door and the back door? Get a really nice breeze blowing through there. You would want that if you're living down here in a house. You want some nice natural air conditioning. The tortoise does not want that. They want to be able to control the environment within the burrow. They want to control the humidity. They want to keep it there. They want to keep the temperature stable. And also they don't want a draft coming down to bring in fumes. For instance, might bring in something from a fire, maybe smoke or some fumes could come down in there. Or as in the case here in the Naples Preserve, a lot of our gopher tortoises have their burrows right along US 41 facing that 6-lane road out there. And if they had a back door that was pulling the air in from outside, they would have all those exhaust fumes coming down into their burrow. The sand outside the mouth is called the apron. And if a gopher tortoise nests at a burrow, which they don't always do, and if they do nest at a burrow, it isn't always at their burrow. She may go to somebody else's burrow. But the location would be about halfway from the top of the apron to the mouth. It's about halfway down that slant. Now, this is where the keystone species comes in. That burrow is so important to so many animals. Actually, throughout the gopher tortoise range, there's well over 350 animals that utilize a gopher tortoise burrow. And for some of them, it's life-saving. Others have to have it even to be able to survive. So I'm going to show you some photographs of animals that we have seen here at the Naples Preserve use our gopher tortoise burrows. This is a southern black racer. See them go down in there all the time. They could be going down in there for protection. They could go down there to get out of the weather. But most of the times when we see them go down in there, they're looking for food. Remember, there can be a lot of other animals down in that burrow. We don't have them here at the Naples Preserve, but eastern diamondback rattlesnakes are well known for sheltering in gopher tortoise burrows. So that should give you a hint right there. You don't ever, ever, ever stick your hand down in a gopher tortoise burrow, or I wouldn't even put my face there. And it is protected. Gopher tortoises are protected and their burrows, so you need to stay your distance. 6-line race runners, they go down in there all the time because there's all kinds of insects down there. As a matter of fact, this could be why our southern black racers go down there a lot. They're down there looking for this lizard because this is one of the things that they will eat here at the preserve. Insects, all kinds of insects down there. Bees, wasps, flies, beetles, even arachnids. I've seen a black widow spider spin its web at the mouth of a gopher tortoise hatchling's burrow that is not being used. Speaking of honeybees, which I do have in this photograph, I have some personal experience with honeybees building their comb, their honeycomb, down in the gopher tortoise burrow. One day I was out surveying the tortoises, and one of the tortoises ran down into a burrow that was next to her. Well, then she started coming out, and then I saw why. All these honeybees were just pouring out of that burrow, but she didn't move. She sat right there. They were all over her. They were going up under her shell. They have soft skin at the top of their legs. Their throat is soft skin. I thought, oh my gosh, they're stinging her. She's going to swell all up. So I ran over, picked her up, moved her a few feet, had to put her down because the bees were after me. I kept running. One of the bees stung my hand, which ended up swelling up. So I thought, well, I'll just come out and look for her the next day. I'm probably going to find her dead. Her throat probably swelled shut. So the next day I went out there expecting to find the worst. And guess what? There she was, eating away, just out there grazing. Nothing wrong with her at all. No swelling at all. And my hand was still swollen. But if you think about it, it makes sense. If you have all these other venomous creatures that will utilize the burrow, doesn't it make sense that the gopher tortoise is probably immune to venom? I mean, after all, they're not a mammal like we are. So look to the left, you're going to see a bee flying down into this burrow. And as she gets in there and turns, you're going to see a lot of insects come flying out of there. You have to look closely. So they're not honeybees, but I think they're flies. And there were probably some bees down in there too. I've actually seen mud daubers, a wasp, go down in there. They're going down in to get the moist sand to help build their nest. All right, Florida box turtles. We've seen tracks of theirs going in and out of the burrows. I've seen them come out of the burrows. And as a matter of fact, one time I actually watched one lay her eggs at a gopher tortoise burrow. And she laid them at the same point that a gopher tortoise would lay its eggs at a burrow. But I don't know how smart that was. The box turtle's a lot smaller, so her nest is not that deep. She doesn't have the long legs to get way down in there. So if a gopher tortoise would have decided to nest at that burrow, it would have just dug the box turtle eggs out when she was going to make her nest. Frogs and toads. Think about it. There's a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture down in that burrow, a lot of insects, a lot of food. This happens to be a greenhouse frog, which are not native, but they're all over here. And I often see them at a burrow. Possums. We've seen possums come in and out of the burrows. And then when our gray fox has kits, has young in our preserve, she actually makes the den out of an unused gopher tortoise burrow. That's where she keeps her little ones. The kits are pretty young in that video, but when they got older, they didn't stay near the den at night. They wandered around. So this is what their mother did. She was so smart. She would go find an unused gopher tortoise burrow out where the kits were roaming around, and she would dig it out so that they had a safe place to run to. Oh, watch out there. So that she had a safe place that her kits could run to in case there was danger. They didn't have to run all the way back to where their den was. I want to talk a little bit about some behaviors. That way, if you're in an area and you're watching gopher tortoises, you might know what's going on. Gopher tortoises do vocalize. They do make sounds, but they're below our hearing level, so you and I cannot hear them. Let me set this up. This is going to be a video. I want to set this up for you. So we have a gopher tortoise burrow, see it? And there's actually a female in the mouth. On the apron are two males. The male closest to the burrow mouth is our dominant male here at the Naples Preserve. He was there courting the female, trying to get her out, talking away to her. when along came the male that you see on the left side. Something to remember when I play this, and remember, we can't hear what the tortoises are saying or understand it, is that I am standing here with a group of elementary children. So I'm glad the kids couldn't understand what the tortoise was saying. Evidently, these two have had it out before, and I guess our dominant one just had to remind the other one. So what this dominant male did then was he turned around, turned his attention toward the female in the burrow, was still trying to get her out, but it's hard to see in this when looking at it now, but she's actually sideways in the mouth. When the female turns sideways and the male's there, it is her big no to him. In other words, she's saying, I'm not coming out. You're wasting your time. You might as well go find somebody else. So this is what happened next. We had a young female come along and she started talking to him. This is one where you can write your own script as to what she's saying. But he thought, oh, well, I'm just going to go with this one. Forget that, the one that's there. So now we're going to get to some true or false. Is that really true? Gopher tortoises cannot swim. Is that true or false? These signs are in Florida, and I've been told that there are some here in Collier County. However, I personally have not seen them. Let's see, can they swim or not? Let's go back to the summer of 2017. This is the preserve out in our scrub. You might notice it's flooded, and I talked about we're upland habitats, it's dry. Well, the summer of 2017 was not only Hurricane Irma, where we had at least 10 inches of rain. I estimated it at 10. But for that whole year, we received over 91 inches of rain on this property. And it started on June 1st and went through about the middle of October. And almost all that rain came within that period of time. So our scrub was flooded quite a bit. Well, there are hatchling gopher tortoises out in there, some of them as young as 1 or 2 months old. So what did they do? The sign says they can't swim. They're not swimming, but they're floating. They just floated next to their burrow because they wanted to stay under cover. You know, if they're out in the open, they're prey for sure. So they just would float by their burrow until, you know, a couple days or so, the water would go down. And they'll even go in their burrow when it's flooded. You'll see them in there and you'll see them with their nose poking out so they can breathe. This is our flatwoods area. It had water in it a big part of the summer, normally doesn't. But we're a dry flatwoods. Other parts down here is wet like this all summer long, and it's where the gopher tortoises live. So the adult tortoises live out in this area. Are they, if they want to go from point A to point B, are they going to walk around all this water? No, they're too smart for that. They know the shortest route is a straight line. They were out there swimming. This one was every day you'd see her swimming across this area. And I didn't get it in this photograph, but there actually was a mother Muscovy duck out there with her ducklings swimming around in the same area. So, gopher tortoises cannot swim. Is that true? Or is that false? That's right, it's false. Now, I want to tell you, I'm talking about down here in Southwest Florida. A lot of the studies for gopher tortoises have happened Central Florida and farther north. So remember, think back to that map that showed the area where the gopher tortoises live, showed their range. There's a huge difference in temperature for one thing, and just what the habitats are. Down here, we have a lot of water. So I just want everybody to realize just the results or what happens at site A aren't necessarily going to transfer to site B. So what I'm showing you now is here at the Naples Preserve and in Collier County. And it could even differ within our county, but they all swim. They see them out on the beaches swimming. They'll see them swimming between the islands down here. But they do need a sign because we do have two problems down here. First of all, we have a lot of gopher tortoises that live right at the beach. If they're living there, they're going to be nesting there. If they're nests, they're going to be eggs hatching. People will see the hatchling gopher tortoises and think they're the sea turtles hatching. So they'll pick them up and put them out in the water. Well, we've got waves coming in and everything. They can't survive that. The thing people need to remember, though, is both the sea turtle and the gopher tortoise are protected, so they really shouldn't even be picking any of them up and taking them to the water. That's one problem. The second problem is we have a lot of canals down here, and they're in where the houses are, and everybody has their boat out back. So the canals have concrete seawalls. People will see a gopher tortoise, put it in the canal. There's no way for it even to try to get out, and they can only tread water so long. So maybe instead of saying, I don't swim, maybe if it would say, I don't live in the water, please do not put me in the water. Next one, you can tell the age by counting the growth rings on the shell. This goes back to a tree, where you'll cut the tree off and then count the rings, and you can tell the age of the tree. So when it concerns gopher tortoises, is it true or false? Well, let's see. This is the carapace, the top shell of a gopher tortoise here at the Naples Preserve. And here you can see the growth rings, but they're not called growth rings on a tortoise, they're annuli. So I put a box around a section there. So if you want to count and see how old this tortoise is, count the annuli and see how old this tortoise is. I'll give you a second here to get your answer. All right, let's reveal how old it really is. This tortoise was found on the 22nd of August in 2017. It weighed 33 grams. 33 grams is a hatching weight. Photo taken the 17th of October 2019. So it's 26 months old, or just 2 years old. So you can see you cannot tell the age by counting the annuli. For one thing, down here in Southwest Florida, our tortoises grow much faster than they do farther north in the range. Why? Here again, go back to the weather down here, the temperature. Our tortoises are out eating probably 360 days of the year. You go farther north, especially if you get into the Panhandle or up in Georgia, there might be months when it's too cold or there's snow on the ground and they can't actually come out. So you can tell the age by counting the growth rings on the shell. False. Gopher tortoises eat only plants. True or false? Well, the only is probably the clue right here as to what your answer should be. They do eat a lot of plants. Plants are the bulk of their diet, especially grasses. They need a lot of roughage in their diet. But here's some other things we've seen them eating at the Naples Preserve. These two are neonates. In other words, they just hatched. Look what they found. That's adult gopher tortoise scat. And they were over there smelling it, taking little pieces of it. So why were they doing that? Well, one reason could be they might be picking up bacteria out of it to start the flora in their gut so that they'll have good digestion. This gopher tortoise, now it is a plant, is eating the fruit off of a saw palmetto. The gopher tortoise, as a matter of fact, all the animals that eat this fruit like it when it's black. That's when it's really ripe. It's gooey and actually it's fermented. So I can always tell when a gopher tortoise has been eating saw palmetto berries just by, I can smell it on its breath. A problem that we have down here in Florida is that people will come and poach these berries. They'll wipe all the berries out of an area and they pick them when they're yellow. So it's before wildlife will eat it. What are they doing with the berries? Well, down here they take them to Immokalee and they sell them and they're used for prostate medicine. Yeah, if you look at over-the-counter drugs and you see where it says saw palmetto on it, it's this berry. So what's wrong with that? Well, especially down here in Southwest Florida, all our wildlife habitats are shrinking because of all the development. At the Naples Preserve, this berry is an important food for the gopher tortoise, the gray fox, the Florida box turtle, raccoons, and who knows, the rats are probably eating them, and maybe even the possums. And in other parts, we don't have them here at the preserve, but our Florida black bear, this is a very, very important in their diet. So what Florida has done is they have a law now that you have to have a permit in order to, which is free, in order to pick these berries. And on that permit, you have to have the GPS location of where you're going to pick. And also you must have the written permission of the landowner. So that has helped tremendously. But what really helped was the news started covering then the people that were being arrested for poaching berries. And that kind of woke everybody up. So it's a step forward into helping our wildlife. This is about a year-old tortoise, and it found some adult scat, and you know what? It smelled a palmetto berry in there. You know, there's still got to be something good in there to eat. So you can see this fruit has a very large seed. There's really not much pulp on it. And then this tortoise is still found, oh, I can eat this leathery skin that's still here. Rabbit droppings. This is a young tortoise eating them, but I have seen adults eat them too. A lot of roughage in that, maybe some nutrition. I hope no one's eating right now when I tell you what this one was eating. She was eating human feces. This was another one I saw. What do you think this one was eating? She was eating feathers. Evidently a red-shouldered hawk had killed a bird because there were feathers all over the ground, and this one ate several of them. An osprey dropped a fish in the preserve, and it laid there for probably 2 weeks. So the maggots had their meal. And then after that 2 weeks, along came this gopher tortoise and ended up consuming the whole fish. So you're going to see they're kind of opportunistic as to what they're going to eat. They do supplement their diet. This one is eating a dead soft-shelled turtle. It did not kill the turtle. They don't kill anything. They scavenge. So it's carcasses that they're going after. Why is there a dead soft-shelled turtle in the Naples Preserve? We don't have permanent water. There'll be a little bit of water in the summer when floods. It'll stay there for a day or two. What happens is we're surrounded by lakes, and the turtles that live in the water come over to the preserve to lay their eggs because it's all sand. They can't lay it around the lakes because it's all sod. So they'll come over to the preserve. Well, now there's a fence there, a little chain link fence to keep the tortoises in the preserve so they don't get on the street. People will see the water turtles trying to get through the fence, so they'll pick them up and put them over the fence. So she'll lay her eggs, you know, she's walked all that way, she's dehydrated, and then she heads back toward where her lake is and can't get through the fence. So if we don't find them within 3 days, this is the end result. This is some gopher tortoise scat I found, and that is a scute from a young gopher tortoise. And if we flip that scat over, you can see there are actually scales and there's a claw there. So evidently this tortoise found a deceased gopher tortoise and was making a meal out of it. These are the pelvic bones of a possum. This tortoise wasn't able to get these down. They were too big. So he turned around and started eating the vertebra. Now this is a good view of the mouth. Tortoises and turtles do not have teeth. It's called a beak, but in this case you can see it's serrated. It's a serrated beak, so it looks like teeth. Tortoises are constantly eating tough things, have to bite off tough grasses and other plants. So their beak is always growing. And if something happens that they're not eating enough tough plant material, this beak can overgrow. And there's an example of it. This is one of our tortoises here, and I don't know why it happened. It just appeared all of a sudden, but then it broke off and he's fine to this day. His beak looks normal, but it can prevent them from being able to eat. All right, it was a Sunday early in the morning, and I found this. It's a young possum, so it's very small. The photo wasn't taken until the end of the day on Sunday, though. So this was Sunday. It probably died that Saturday night. And this is what I found Wednesday afternoon. She did not eat the entire part that you see right now. She left some, but a couple days later it was gone. So I don't know if she came back and got it, if another tortoise did, or perhaps some other animal finished it off. This is appetizing to watch all this, isn't it? So, gopher tortoises only eat plants. Is that true or is that false? That's right, it's false. But do remember, plants are the bulk of their diet. And they need a variety. There's over 350 plants they're known to eat. Here at the preserve, we've documented them eating about 28 or 128 different plants. But of course, we don't have 350 different plants on this property. Nesting. Now this is here at, remember, this is at the Naples Preserve. Nesting at our preserve begins March 25th is when we usually see the first ones, and lasts through about the end of May. The eggs are about the size of a golf ball, but they're not dimpled, they're smooth. When they lay them, they are pretty soft. It's easier to get them out that way. And not only that, she doesn't want them breaking when they're falling down into the nest. So remember these dates, March 25th to the end of the May. Now that's here at the preserve. You go farther north, it's going to change. When does their warm weather start? And it probably isn't as long. When does their cold weather start? So this is at the Naples Preserve. Here's a tortoise again. Now you should remember what this one's doing. It's just cleaning out its burrow. But we'll have guests come and go, oh, come here, come here, come here. There's a tortoise digging a nest. No, that's not digging a nest. This is digging a nest. They use their back feet only. You'll see her do right and left, right and left. And I just think it's amazing. They can do this without even seeing what they're doing. Just feeling with their feet. They know the temperature. They know if the moisture is correct down there. This is covering up the nest. They'll take their front feet and flip sand back over the area. And then they go around and they stomp it down with their back feet. By the time she's done, sometimes it takes about an hour to cover it up. You can't even tell that that ground was ever disturbed at all. As a matter of fact, see that it's actually moving above her there. She took that and put it down over the top of it. She really camouflaged her nest. Watch, this is a video. Keep your eyes, see if you can see the hatching tortoise. So hatching here at the Naples Preserve is July, around the 1st of July into September. Incubation is about, it's in the 90 to 100 day range. What'll happen is the nest, you can see when that photograph if I had of the tortoise laying eggs, you could see that they're on top of each other. So the bottom of the nest is going to be cooler than the top of the nest. So the top of the nest, they're going to develop faster. They'll hatch first. So what'll happen is they kind of wait till everybody's all out of their eggs and they're all raring to go. And then they'll erupt out of the ground, just like the sea turtles. After all, there's safety in numbers, right? You just hope the predator gets your brother or sister. When these are neonates, newborns. If you look at the photo on the left, you might notice the carapace, that's the top shell, is kind of dented in on the left side. This one was in an egg that was lower in the nest, so there was probably another egg laying against it. It'll straighten out. The shells are really soft when they hatch. They have to be. You got to remember they're folded in that egg. If you look at the photo on the right, this is showing the plastron, the bottom shell, and right there's like a line that goes across. This is straightened out, but sometimes it's not straight when they hatch. It'll be a real deep groove there, and that's where they're bent when they're in the egg. If you look below it, you see the slit. That is where the yolk stem was. In other words, that's where it was connected to the egg yolk. You can also see too that the plastron's a little distorted in shape. This will all straighten out. But this is one thing that'll show you that it's a neonate, that it's a new hatch. Also, what shows that they just hatched or they're a few days old is they have an egg tooth. The photo on the left, it's that light spot you see that's below the nostrils. And this is easier to see on the profile. They have to have a way to get out of the egg. Anything that's in an egg needs an egg tooth. Snakes have an egg tooth. Now, in the case of a snake, their egg is soft. So what they'll do is they use theirs like a razor blade. They'll just move their head back and forth and put slits in the egg. The gopher tortoise will rotate in the egg and pretty much cuts what would be like the equator to open the egg up. The egg tooth is there for a few days and then it'll fall off. Something interesting that I noticed was that they all have a different scale pattern on top of their head. Because we have a permit and I catch the tortoises, weigh, measure them. We're just doing monitoring, behaviors, writing all that down. So they're photographed from all different angles. But I wasn't photographing the top of the head here until maybe 2-3 years ago. And because I noticed the scale pattern was different on them. Wished I would have realized it earlier, because to mark the number on them when they're young, I use a non-toxic marker. Well, that only lasts so long. If you don't see them for several months, sometimes the marks have worn off, and then you have to try to figure out which one it was. So I have actually used this already, this scale pattern on top of the head, to determine if it is or isn't this specific tortoise. And it's even those that came out of the same nest, same clutch of eggs. These all came out of one nest. Look how different the scale pattern is on each one of them. Now, as they get older and the skin darkens, it does make it a lot harder to see what the scale pattern is. All right, 2 nesting seasons in Collier County, Florida. Anything you'll read will say gopher tortoises have 1 nesting season. Think again, where are we? We're way down here in the south. We're subtropic, bordering on tropical. They're eating 360 days out of the year. Ray Ashton, who was a well-known researcher and had written books with his wife, Patricia, just a wealth of information about the gopher tortoise, had always told me that, you know what, Becky, the gopher tortoises are different in Collier County. And he said, I wouldn't doubt they have 2 nesting seasons down here. So I kept that in the back of my mind because I thought, we're a small area, about 8.5 acres. It's very accessible. We can see the gopher tortoise to see what's going on. I think if anybody can prove it, if it is true, you can't prove that's false. You can only prove it's true. I think we're going to be able to do it here at the Naples Preserve. So on March 2nd, 2011, I got really excited. I found a hatchling that was 33 grams. Okay, that's a hatching weight. And guess what? Remember I was showing you the plastron and that line that goes across? I said that's a deep groove when they hatch, when they're hatching, because that's where they're folded. Well, sometimes it doesn't straighten out for a while and until after they're out of the ground. This one had that really deep groove, and the plastron was malformed, just like a new hatch. So I thought, wow, we're going to prove it. We're going to prove it. Here's one that hatched here in the spring. So the eggs had to have been laid back in, what, December? They were laid in the winter. So I kept an eye on this. I'm there monitoring them, and, documenting their weight gain and growth rates. The 28th of September, you can see it's really growing well, but guess what? That plastron still had never really straightened out. So I thought, well, okay, that was just a malformed plastron. Something must have happened when it did hatch. So that kind of burst my bubble there. But then here on May 4th, 2018, I found a gopher tortoise nest that a raccoon had gotten into. Or no, this was the gray fox. The gray fox got this one. And if you look right here, there's some debris. I will blow that up so you can see what it is. I took this photograph. It was because I didn't have a camera with me when I found it. It was about a week after I found this. And that eggshell is gopher tortoise. They were all around there. It was gopher tortoise. And look at the scutes. It's off a hatchling gopher tortoise. I also found this. So they were pretty well desiccated because it was over a week they'd been laying there. But these looked well developed. And I don't think they were too far from hatching. So you saw the date there, May. So here again, a winter. They laid them in the winter. All right, March 16th. This was a week ago from today. Guess what a visitor spotted out here? Yes. Look, she said, look, there's a hatchling. And as soon as I saw it, I knew. I said, I bet it only weighs 30 grams, which it did. I go, that's a neonate. Look how little it is. So there's the weight, the size. All right, sounds like a neonate, a new hatch. March 16th. That means the eggs would have been laid at least 100 days before this. Here again, end of November, maybe beginning of December. That's a winter season nesting. That would be a second season. But let's explore farther. Is it a neonate, or am I going to be disappointed again like I was with that first one back in 2011? Here's the plastron. Well, look it. Well formed, looks normal. Where the yolk stem was, that's all healed, but that's not unusual. I've seen them come out of the nest and their plastron looks just as good as what you see now, and it's all healed where the yolk stem was. Let's look for more things. Well, it was out eating. That doesn't rule out that it's not a neonate. I have seen them come out of the nest and go right to start eating. The behavior on this made me suspicious that it was a neonate anyway, because it wasn't afraid. It wasn't tucking its head in. There were people there on the boardwalk watching this, and it didn't freeze. It didn't tuck its head in. And one that's, couple weeks old or so does that. They're real wary. They're aware there could be predators out there. But when they first come out, they're just kind of oblivious to everything. They're exploring. What did it do after it was done eating? Turned out it didn't have a burrow. Oh, okay. It just dug underneath all these leaves and grass. Does that prove that it's a neonate? Well, I've seen them come out of the nest and dig a burrow, and yet I've seen them come out and go and rebury themselves. So I'm still leaning toward a neonate here. But here's something this one had that one in 2011 did not have. It has an egg tooth. It's got to be a neonate. This is only on for a few days after they hatch. It's been a week now, and it's still there, but it's been inactive the last couple of days. It's staying down under, kind of like in a pallet. They go down and kind of dig a little shallow area. It's been staying in there. So now all I need to do is find one laying eggs in the winter, and then we got it for sure. So remember, March 16th, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018, 2018 got to go back 100 days. So they were, you know, could have been laid end of November into December, probably have to add a few more days for incubation because of the winter weather. But December down here, we've been in the 80s, and January too. It's been warm down here in the winter. The Gopher Tortoise Council, that is a great, wonderful organization to join and to support. They have done so much for the gopher tortoises, getting, you know, the laws changed for protection. They do a lot of education. They have an outreach program. They provide grants that are used for tortoise education at different parks. They also provide money like for research. They award scholarships to students that are doing research. And they have a really, really great meeting. There's about 2 days. So it's in November. And this year, hopefully it can happen. We'll get this pandemic cleared up, but it's going to be in St. Petersburg, Florida. And you can sit there for 2 days and hear about all the research that is going on with gopher tortoises, other animals that might be using the burrow, and even other animals that are living in the area. It's just wonderful, and you can just networking and everything else. Great organization to join. I've got their website up there. So with that, that's the end of this. Actually, we could go on for days talking about the gopher tortoises here at the Naples Preserve. If you want to kind of keep track of our tortoises, and matter of fact, all our flora and fauna here at the Naples Preserve, there is a Facebook page, Friends of the Naples Preserve. And at the bottom, that's me, Rebecca Speer, with my work address. So if anybody has any questions, you can always email me at that address. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the program. Have a great 2021.